Hi, I'm James Davis.
And I'm Claire Davis.
We're the Midlife Mentors, here to lift the lid on how to achieve health and happiness.
The balanced, no-nonsense way. We have a very, very, very special guest on our podcast today. I mean, we are super excited. This has been a long time coming. We have Jeremy Whaley with us today. Say hi, Jeremy.
Hi.
So we know Jeremy. James and I is like literally our hero, and I big that up in a big, big way because I started listening to his podcast first. It's called Think Rich Radio, and I started listening to it, and I'm not kidding you, I consumed them all like I was scoffing a chocolate cake.
It's a great show, really great show.
Just literally consumed them all within like a week or so, and then asked James to join in my consuming, and we were just bowled over and completely overwhelmed with how amazing the podcasts are. Listen, guys, everyone out there, you have to listen to this. I've even promoted it on our social media channels. It's incredible. And Jeremy's going to tell us a little bit more about the podcast as well, I'm sure. But honestly, totally changed our direction. It's just incredibly empowering. And so I reached out to tell Jeremy that I felt this way, and we started a dialogue, and then I asked him onto our podcast, and here he is.
Here we are. Just to put you in the picture here, we're sitting in our London flat. If you hear some rattling in the background, there is a storm raging and there's a tree banging on our window. And it's very early in the morning, but it's very late at night over in Nashville.
Nashville!
Jeremy.
Yes. It is 1 o'clock in the morning where I'm at, which is my prime time, so I'm doing great.
Wow, you're a night owl.
Yes. Once I get everybody to sleep, I can actually be productive. So thank you for that introduction. And in fact, I think I might feel like doing a podcast after that.
Ah!
Yay!
So, Jeremy, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? Just free flow. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I started my adult life as a musician. That's how I ended up in Nashville, Tennessee, which for those of you in the UK and the other side of the world, you may not realize, but Nashville is considered Music City here in the United States. And so we have kind of a hodgepodge of everything from country to gospel to pop, and everything is represented here in Nashville. And so I started my adult life as a professional musician, and I did that for almost 9 years. Until I realized that I was incredibly unfulfilled. And that was when the first big crisis of my life hit, and I walked away from all of it. In the midst of all that, I had chosen to get married, and my marriage had kind of fallen apart, and my wife didn't want to be married anymore, which was really sad because I really liked her still. But that was kind of the setup that, felt like a huge setback, but it really was the impetus that opened the door for what I've now done for over a decade in terms of helping people and personal growth and finance. I went on to start a company where we taught people how to trade stocks and options and some foreign currency. Probably foreign currency is bigger over there in the UK. But so we did that for 10 years. I sold that business just a few months ago, and I started Think Rich Radio as part of a new endeavor to move into the next phase of my life. So is that enough, or do you want some more detail?
No, that's great. That's great. And just to kind of explain, I don't think I necessarily did this at the beginning. I was just banging on about how much we love you, quite frankly, Jeremy. But actually, I started listening to your podcast because, we're entrepreneurs. We have our own business, and it was all around kind of success and money and financial freedom and all that kind of stuff. And it was definitely, we were going through a difficult time in our lives. I know we've shared this on our podcast before. recently, but we had a couple of months that were really, really difficult personally and professionally as well. And I wanted something to lift me up and inspire me. And that's why I started listening to your podcast. And that's why we've got you on this show, because I absolutely 100% know, and James does as well, how much you're going to inspire people to become the best version of themselves. So I just wanted to set that up there as well.
Well, thank you. That means the world to me. That speaks to my soul. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It's so true, Jeremy. Honestly, it really, really did help shift our mental state big time when it was really difficult for us. So thank you. So why don't we go on to one of the questions that is, I think, going to really, really help people out there. If you could pinpoint one thing that led to your success, what might it be, Jeremy?
Well, I guess you have to ask in which area, because I've done so many things. Sometimes I feel like I'm a jack of all trades, but I'm really just living. Yeah, I'm really just living a life. But where people consider me successful is, the business side of things, and of course, I'm pretty successful with the trading and all that stuff that I've ended up teaching people. But really, the turning point came in the middle of the darkest moment when my wife, she actually had left. She didn't tell me she was leaving. Ironically, she just disappeared and never came back. I guess that's how it goes. At the moment, I didn't realize that, because she said she'd be back in 2 weeks and she never came back.
Oh, that's tough to deal with.
I know we're laughing, but as we've said before, and some of the times we've spoken to each other, you have to laugh. You've got to keep your sense of humour, haven't you?
Well, eventually she did come back, so that's the happy ending. But in the midst of that, we were seeing a marriage counselor. And I have a punchline here. We were seeing this marriage counselor, and he asked me, he said something really great advice. He said, the only way you can have a healthy marriage is for two healthy individuals to come together. This whole idea that, I found my soulmate, now I'm complete. That's Disney. That's fake. In the real world, you have to be complete Claire. You have to be complete James. In my case, it was complete Jeremy and complete Kenya. And so we had an individual session. He said, Jeremy, what do you really want to do? And I told him, and I said, I have all this history. I've studied all this stuff, and I really want to go teach this stuff. And then I went into my whole excuses. I don't know this. I don't know that. And I don't have this success yet. And I don't have that. And he did this thing where he said, what if I give you permission? And I said, what do you mean? And, I had all these stories that my parents wouldn't accept it, that my friends wouldn't accept it, the world wouldn't accept it, God wouldn't accept it, whatever. And he had me get down on my knees, and he literally had like a fake wand that he went left to right over my head. And he said, I give you permission to go do this. And that was a turning point. That was the moment where, for all these years leading up to that moment, I had read, I had prepared, I had ingested this information, but I wasn't free to go do it. And when you ask the question, what's the one turning point? That was the moment. Because from that moment forward, we went out, and within the first 90 days, we'd made more money than I had made than an entire year. And it just snowballed from there. And it seemed like everything started to flow whenever he gave permission. So I think I can sum that up. I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking, but I feel like I can sum that up to say permission. The one thing is permission. He gave me permission, and that was the thing that cut me free.
That's amazing.
That is an amazing point. So, wow.
I love that. We didn't yet.
Having permission to thrive.
Yeah, permission to do what you were born to do. And we do believe that there are things, you do come with a purpose. It might take you a while to figure it out, but actually giving yourself permission to live the life on your terms, I think it's something that so many people struggle with for so many different reasons. Like you were saying, it could be parents, it could be society. It's that worry that you're going to be rejected, or not accepted in the world if you step into the person and your purpose.
Yeah, and you kind of triggered an idea there, but there was something about the permission he gave me. Well, the thing I was wanting to do is I was wanting to teach the stuff that I had learned, and I was wanting to share knowledge, but I felt like I had to reach a certain level of success before I could help somebody. Well, what I found was it was in helping people with what I already had. I was already further down the road. And it was with helping people that I was starting to contribute more. And the more I contributed, the more I became the person that I actually wanted to be. And so there was this metaphor that came up very early on. I had a friend whose sister had a brain tumor. at like 13 years old, very, very young. And when they were in the hospital for almost 2 years straight, they would meet these other families whose kids were coming in. And of course, they all had brain tumors too. Well, what they found is, 3 or 4 months into this journey, they would meet somebody who just found out their child had a brain tumor. And of course, they didn't know how their own child's journey was going to end up, my friend's family, but they could help this new family. And they could say, look, we don't know what the end is, but we just walked that part and it's going to be okay. And that's the magic of contribution from where you are right now. No matter where you are, we put these ideas on ourselves that we have to be successful. It's not the world, it's us. And when you get outside of yourself and you let go of your own need to be perfect, and you just look back and say, hey, Claire, I can help you right now. Hey, James, I can help you right now. And I may not have all the answers, but I figured this part out. And let me share. That's when you start contributing to others. And when you start contributing on that level, your world of fulfillment just accelerates. And now you're not thinking about yourself, you're thinking about others. And it just becomes a beautiful snowball.
It is beautiful, and our listeners out there, this is exactly why I became obsessed with Jeremy's podcast, because it is all these nuggets of wisdom that he delivers. Listen, yeah, it's exactly for that reason. Thank you, that's beautiful. Thank you, Jeremy. And so true.
Jeremy, what would say the biggest lesson you've learnt in life?
Well, besides don't pee uphill. No, I'm just kidding.
And in the wind.
Yeah.
Yes, in the wind. The biggest lesson, I think, was another turning point. And I've had so many of these. Actually, let me pre-frame this lesson this way. I'm a private pilot as well. And whenever yeah, I know, one of the random mini jack of all trades that I do, but I'm a private instrument rated pilot. But when I was learning to fly, you would set the heading of the plane. That is, which direction you're going. And if you set it just a couple of degrees the wrong way, you end up in the wrong spot, but you don't know it at first. And I started to liken that to success. Whenever you make an aha, or you get an aha, or you make a change in your life, in your case, somebody starts doing the exercise, they start working out. The first week, they may not notice a difference, but you have to carry that out. And so I call it a 2-degree shift. The difference of a heading bug of 360 and 050 is not that big initially, but eventually as you carry it out over several miles, or I guess in the UK it'd be kilometers, but as you carry it out over a distance, the distance gets further and further apart. Well, these little ahas that you get through life, they're like a heading bug, a little 2-degree shift. And before you know it, you're going a totally different direction. You just keep making a shift, and immediately it feels like nothing happened. But eventually you look back and you're like, wow, look at all the distance that we've traveled. So that's kind of the pre-frame for this aha that I want to tell you. This is maybe one of the biggest ones where it was just boom, I was off in a different direction. So it was during that time after my wife had left and she had actually come back, we started succeeding, and I was probably about nine, maybe 10 months into that first business. And we were probably making, I don't know, $250,000 or something, which was more than as a musician I'd ever made. And I was still stuck on some stories. And I remember one night I was sitting out on the balcony. We were living in this really small 2-bedroom apartment, maybe 900 square feet. I don't know what that would be in UK terms, but one of y'all's listeners can figure it out. And it was small, let's put it that way. And I was sitting out on this balcony, and I was just kind of looking at the night sky, making some notes, kind of writing some dreams. And I noticed that I just kept saying, if only I, blah, 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 fill in the blank. If only I had this, and if only I had this, and if only I had this. And then I realized that the word that unlocked my limiting belief was, or the phrase I should say, was if only. For a long time, it was if only I had a mentor. And then it was if only I had this marketing person, and if only I had this, and if only I had that. And what I realized is I was making all these stories and all these excuses, and that's why I wasn't getting to where I wanted to go. And when I realized the words that followed the phrase, if only I, the next phrase, whatever that is, that's your limiting belief. That's the thing that's holding you back. And it's never a lack of the resources. If only I had the capital to start the business. No, it's not the money. It's the resourcefulness to find a way to get around that obstacle. Ryan Halliday wrote a book called The Obstacle is the Way. And that's one of the things that I discovered. Yeah, it's about, realizing that limiting belief, that thing that you think is the obstacle, that's actually the pathway. And for me, when I realized that language pattern, if only I, and then fill in the blank, that was one of the biggest ahas I ever had in my life. It was like a 90-degree shift, and I'm just going in a different direction. And ever since that day, which was, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago now, that's how I identify my limiting beliefs. What's holding me back? I just say, well, what's my if only? If only I, and there's my limiting belief in that moment.
I love that.
Wow, I love that.
Not heard that before. Another little nugget that never thought of before. That's incredible. That's a really, really insightful. I'm going to do that later.
So then you work on that belief, I guess, and work on shifting it.
Yeah. So, in your industry, if only I had more time to work out. Well, that's bullcrap. I mean, the truth is we all have 24 hours, right? Some people figure out how to have enough time to work out. Some don't. And the thing about a limiting belief is you really believe it. I mean, it is true to you in that moment, even if it's not true in actuality. So whatever follows if only I, that is the key that you've got to unlock, and you got to be resourceful. It's not about the lack of resources. It's not about the money. It's not about the time. That's a resource. It's about becoming resourceful with what you have.
Yeah.
Wow, I love that.
Love that. And also, do you know, Jeremy, I absolutely loved in one of your podcast episodes, you were saying about seasons, and we won't go into that now, but one of the things that really just came out for me when you were talking about the when you were flying, and it's just a small shift. I think so much of the time when you have a real purpose and a real mission and you're going after it, sometimes it can be really, really difficult to celebrate the tiny victories because you're going after something that feels so big. You completely forget to notice the small shifts that you have been making that are actually in the end going to make a huge difference. But it's really hard when you're stuck in the mud. Like I was saying about the post that I did the other day, sometimes you feel like you're going forward and then you're going backwards, but it is those small little shifts that end up making a huge difference in the future.
Well, the journey is the training. If you don't go through the journey, then you can't receive the success. People look at people that are successful and they say, oh, I want that. Well, the truth is you don't, because you don't know who that person is. You don't know what it took to get there. All you see is the highlights. And the path to get there was the journey. And it's like that post you're referring to is all these ups and downs, and oh, I'm going to go bankrupt. Oh, I'm going to be a multimillionaire. It's up and down, up and down. Well, this is within a 5-minute period. The way a female entrepreneur's mind works. A male entrepreneur, we at least give it an hour.
I love you, Jeremy. Jeremy's referring to basically it's a graph of within about a 5-minute period. As an entrepreneur, you think this is going amazing. And then 2 minutes later, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to go bankrupt.
Yeah.
You're up again and you're saying, you know what? I've just created an amazing content. I'm amazing. Then you go back down again and go, no, you know what? I'm rubbish. Up and down.
Yeah. But it's true. I mean, I remember when I was at the bottom of the bottom, I ruined my credit. There's been 2 times in my life that I've just totally ruined my credit. And I don't know what it's like in the UK, but in America, when you ruin your credit, it takes 7 years to get it reset. So there's twice that I did that. And yeah, so this giant credit rating conspiracy. But what I did is, I was so broke and I had such a limiting mindset at the time. I could not pay the minimum payment on a $500 credit card bill. So that minimum payment was like $35. I mean, it was nothing. Well, fast forward several years, and I remember there was a day when we had an American Express card in our business, and I owed more money on this American Express card that had to be paid off in 45 days than we owed on our house. And I remember thinking, wow, how my problems have changed. And we paid it off. And the point I'm trying to make here is not the money that we paid off, but if it had not been for the ups and downs, I mean, stories, I could sit here and talk to you for hours and hours about business startup on the internet and things that you never see coming. And if it hadn't been for those ups and downs, when we had that bill that was larger than my house payment or my total debt on the house, we wouldn't have been able to pay it. But it was the journey that prepared us for that.
Yeah. Wow. That's a really powerful story.
It really is. I remember, again, one of your podcasts mentioned that. And I think what we're realising a lot at the moment is that journey. It's been quite difficult for us in the last couple of months. but it is already, I can feel the shift, and we can both feel the shift, that actually we are being prepared for the success that is coming. And again, I'll say it again, the podcast on the seasons, I can't remember what that one's called, Jeremy, you know, the one where watch out, it's going to happen fast or something. That one that talks about, you know, you're sowing the seeds and then you're harvesting, you know, then you harvest. It was so powerful, and I feel like we've been in that stage in the last couple of months.
Yeah, I talk about seasons often because I see that the world works through seasons and through cycles. But one of the key things when you're in those seasons, and I've kind of been through one of those too, because I sold the business and I had a fallout with my previous business partner, and it was really a dark time. But I learned the difference. You know, language has meaning. I'm kind of jumping around here. As NLP people, you understand this. Language has very specific meaning. And I learned the difference in the language of to and for. Instead of saying, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening for me? And it changes the perspective of everything. One word changes the meaning of the question. And for somebody who's in a dark moment, you know, why are all these things happening to me? Well, as long as it's happening to you, you're a victim of the world, you're a victim of God, there's nothing you can do about it. But if you change the question, why is it happening to me? Why is it happening for me? Now it's a gift from the world. It's a gift from God. Receive it. Well, why is this happening? What good can I take from this? And that little shift can be the difference of getting out of bed and putting another foot down and moving forward and sliding down to the slope of despair.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of my little affirmations has always been in the last few months is everything is happening for my good. Everything is happening for my good, and it's a real perspective shift, but it's definitely something that has, like you said, dragged us through some dark times, and actually thinking, what's the lesson here? And there are so many lessons, so many wonderful benefits that have come out of, you know, some dark days that we've had.
Definitely.
Thank you, Jeremy. As always, wonderful nugget of wisdom there. So what would you say the top 3 tips for success are? Woo, big question.
Well, my joke is wake up and be awesome. If you just wake up and you be awesome, then everything will work out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you broke up. What did you say?
Claire just agreed. She went, yes.
Oh, yeah. Legitimately.
Well, Claire's awesome once I wake up and make her coffee.
So if you just wake up and be awesome, that's a rule to live by. You'll be fine.
Yeah, my face uncrumples. Once he gives me coffee, my face uncrumples, and then I can say to myself, you know what? I'm going to be awesome today.
Yeah, that's it. All right, so you asked me this question, what are the 3 top tips for success? And I put some thought into it. I'm going to go in reverse order. So number 3, which will look like the first one, is just get in motion. An object in motion tends to stay in motion. If you keep starting and stopping, you're never going to make any progress. And every time you start, it takes more energy to start than it does to keep moving. So the metaphor I like to use, I have a couple I use. One is the metaphor of the train. A train moving 40 miles an hour, which I don't know how many kilometers that is, but a train barely moving can blow through a 10-foot block of concrete. But that same train, if you put just a 1-inch square in front of a wheel, when it's not moving, that train can't move at all. And that's the power of momentum. So it's so important to just start moving. The other metaphor I use is the metaphor of a bus or a plane or anything that's a large object. You can't move the object if it's standing still. And so you got to get the bus moving just so you can turn the wheel so you can change the direction. So people say, well, I don't know where to go. I don't know how to get there. Well, it doesn't matter. Start moving, and it's a lot easier to change the direction when you're moving than when you're standing still. But if you keep starting and stopping and starting and stopping, you're never getting to motion, and you're never going to go anywhere. So that's my third tip that I mentioned first. All right, so number 3 is move towards uncertainty. You've heard me talk about on the podcast the 6 human needs, and we have certainty and uncertainty. They're kind of in conflict with each other. People want certainty. I want certainty that my money is going to work out. I want certainty the relationship's going to work out. But all of the adventure of life is in the uncertainty. All of the greatness of life is found in uncertainty. You can't have great investments unless you take risk and you have uncertainty. You can't have great relationships unless you have uncertainty. You can't find true love unless you take the risk of uncertainty. You can't live adventure unless you have uncertainty. And so when you're looking at entrepreneurship, you're looking at growth, you're looking at anything, by very nature, the fact that you don't have it, it's uncertain. So you have to move towards those things and move towards those emotions where you feel uncomfortable, talking to the people you don't feel comfortable talking to, taking the risks you don't feel comfortable taking, just so you can experience something different. Just because it's scary to you doesn't mean it's scary. It just means it's scary to you because it's uncertain. So move towards uncertainty. So number one, get in motion. Number two is move towards uncertainty. That's where all the magic is going to be found.
Love that. Love that.
Cool. All right. My number 3 tip, which is actually my number 1 tip, is something that I call unconditional faith. And I started working with this a few years ago, but it's this idea that if you see it and you understand that it's there, then it doesn't take any faith. But kind of like all of the great things of life come from uncertainty, everything that's worth having requires faith. And I did an episode where I talked about 4 levels of unconditional faith, or 4 levels of faith. And unconditional faith means that you have faith even when you have no reason to believe. Just like we talk about unconditional love, the love of a parent towards a child, there's really nothing that child can do to violate that love completely. And if we're going to have faith that something's going to happen, it has to be unconditional faith. So someone says, well, I want to have the life of my dreams. I want to have the marriage of my dreams, but my wife but my husband would never fill in the blank. There's the story, right? If only. Well, you have to have faith. You have to have unconditional faith that this relationship can be there, or else you're going to stop working towards it. Or you want to have success in finance or in business or in entrepreneurship. You have to imagine what it is that you want and have unconditional faith that you can get there. Or, in the case of physical fitness, or success after 40, whatever it is, you have to believe that you can actually do it. And you have to do it even when everybody around you says it can't happen. Your mother says it can't happen. Your father says it can't happen. Your kids say it can't happen. Your dog won't even talk to you, whatever. You have to look at him and say, screw you. I know what I can do. And the moment you stop believing in yourself, you'll never get there. But the moment that you believe and you admit to yourself, I'm going to have unconditional faith. I'm going to have unconditional faith. This is going to work, even though I have no idea how. That's the moment you're going to find a solution.
Beautiful.
Oh, I love that.
And the unconditional faith thing, that I think it was, I can't remember what podcast that was that I listened to, but I remember coming away and literally writing out my affirmations based around unconditional faith. And
wow, thank you.
It was that one. It was, I have unconditional faith that X, Y, and Z, and then everything that I know I can have. That's one of my affirmations every morning. I try and say it to myself throughout the day, constantly. I have unconditional faith. I have unconditional faith, and it's beautiful, and it's so powerful, so powerful.
I mean, I think those 3 things there together are just so powerful. So recap, just get momentum, start moving, move towards uncertainty, and have unconditional faith. I mean, yeah.
It is so true. The magic is in the uncertainty. Absolutely. And sometimes it's so terrifying to be uncertain, and be moving towards it. But you also know there's a part of us that also knows that the magic of our life is in the uncertainty, without a doubt.
Right. Well, if you go back, the beginning of this, we talked about my story, and we talked about how my wife had left, and I left everything that was known to me. I walked away from to try to preserve this marriage. And if I had not done that, I never would have unlocked all the potential that I had. And that's where most people are. They're living the same pattern over and over. They live the same life with the same spouse, with the same job, the exact same routine over and over and over. And sometimes you just need to move. You just need to go somewhere. We moved all the way across the country. We just upended everything. And everybody thought we were crazy. But that's what it took. Until you break the pattern, you can't go anywhere.
Absolutely. I always liken it to when I was in, my PR job, really good career, good money, and then I just turned around and said, you know what, I'm going to become a personal trainer and do nutrition. And then went back to earning minimum wage and wiping sweat off gym equipment. And everyone was like,
right.
What are you doing? And I was like, I need a shock. I need to just shock myself out of this life, and that level of uncertainty is what actually made me. It made me.
Right. And, a lot of people, I'm sure, listening are probably unhappy with their life in some way, shape, or form. And that's exactly what they need to do, is just upend everything. One of the best managers that I ever hired to work for me, I found him at Starbucks, and he was making coffee at Starbucks. And when I got to know him, what I found out is he was the executive director of a nonprofit in New York City, and he was miserable. And so they moved from New York City to Nashville, and he figured, well, I've always kind of wanted to make coffee, so I'll just make some coffee. So he went from, a very high level position with a lot of certainty to total uncertainty. And that's where we found him. And it was a relationship. He worked for us for 6 or 7 years. It was great. But I say that to say that, some of the people that are listening are thinking, I've got this cushy job. It pays me. I know when the paycheck's going to show up. And that's the reason you're stuck. You're stuck because of the very thing that you're holding on to. You got to let go. You got to let go and move towards something that's worth moving towards. You're only going to find fulfillment when you're moving towards stuff, not as long as you're hanging on to something just because of the certainty.
Yeah, I did a post on that a little while ago, actually, about follow your bliss. Following your bliss, but also the reason you are unhappy is because you are not, as human beings, we are designed to evolve and grow and become something, become more. And it's when you're feeling depressed and anxious and low, most of the time it's because you are just utterly stagnant.
Yeah, the other thing you may have heard me talk about is when you're feeling depressed and you're feeling low and you're feeling down, which I've certainly had my moments, every time you're thinking about one person, and that person is you. So the antidote to depression, the antidote to feeling sad is to start serving others. And the amazing thing about serving others is that's the magic of business too. I mean, you guys have discovered it. The more you serve people in your fitness, the more fulfilled you are. And the magic of that is not thinking about yourself. To have a good business, you have to be a servant. You have to serve others in a way that other people won't, especially in today's market where everything's so competitive. It's all about servitude. Well, the magic of that is you're not thinking about you. And when you stop thinking about yourself, now you don't have time to be depressed. It's kind of simple, really.
No, it's beautiful. And that is also awesome. so true. Moving into a place of serving outside yourself and not kind of focusing on just internal stuff all the time. It's beautiful. Thank you so much, Jeremy. We've just absolutely kind of blown away again.
Yeah, loved that. Such great advice there. Great advice. I'm
blown away by having you on this podcast. We're so honoured to have you on here. It's, everything you say really resonates with us on a deep level, and we absolutely know 100% that would have resonated with all of our listeners. It's a beautiful podcast, and thank you so much for being part of that.
Yeah, so if our listeners would like more of Jeremy, there of course is your podcast, Jeremy, Think Rich Radio. How else can our listeners connect with you?
Yeah, well, okay, so Think Rich, just whenever you use those words, think of me. You Think Rich Radio, you can go to thinkrichrradio.com. You can go to Apple Podcasts, look up Think Rich Radio, but easiest is go to thinkrichrradio.com, and that'll link to Apple Podcasts, to Google, Stitcher, and so you can subscribe anywhere you want there, thinkrichrradio.com. And then if you don't mind, do you mind if I talk about my Think Rich 2020 for a brief moment?
Yeah, definitely talk about it.
I was about to ask you if you could just mention that, please, because, we absolutely want you to mention it.
Yeah, so if you go to thinkrich2020.com, you'll have access to a new training program on mindset that I've put together based on the original 13 principles of success that Napoleon Hill talked about in Think and Grow Rich almost 100 years ago. And I'm really excited about this program because it's the first time I've ever actually gone through and done a personal development program. So you can go to thinkrich2020.com and get access to that. I love this program. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look at it yet, but I'm just going to toot my own horn. I love this program. I'm so excited about the way the videos came out and just the content. And I would be watching some of his videos as I was editing. I was like, this is really good. I actually like watching that. So I'm excited about that. But here's what I want to do for your listeners. Can I give them a coupon and they could save like $200 if they want to sign up for it?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Okay, so listeners out there, this is completely random. We didn't know he was going to do this. So please do, Jeremy. Go ahead.
Okay, so if you just go to thinkrich2020.com and just, read whatever's there on the page. You don't have to read it all. Just go to the part where it says to purchase it. And when you click that, in the coupon code, use a coupon code UK2020 because you guys are in the UK, right? So we'll just do UK2020 and you can save $200, which is like 60%.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeremy.
Oh, I'm so chuffed.
And you get access to all of it.
So chuffed by that. I don't know whether you know the word chuffed too much in the US, but chuffed means happy.
Very happy.
Very happy in the UK.
Oh, that's awesome.
No, honestly, guys, please go and check that out. As we said, he's Jeremy's podcast. Honestly, I'm even going to go as far to say it really has changed my life. I know for James, it really has for his. It's that profound and that life changing. So check it out. And now you can obviously go and purchase his course, which is amazing.
I'm going to ask Jeremy to finish with one thing because it really resonate with me. Jeremy, if you are willing, would you give permission to us and to all our listeners to go out there? Like, you know, the thing with the wand?
Go and do it now. Do it now.
Yes, I would do that. Before I do that, I'm going to do one more push for myself. This is really just for you guys. It's all the free stuff. You know, Think Rich 2020, that's a paid program, but Think Rich Radio, it's all free. I do a live on Facebook and on Zoom every Sunday night. It's all free, folks. And, you know, if you don't have money, it's okay. Don't let that be a hindrance to getting any of this information. I mean, we just want to serve and to share stuff with people. And I'm just honored that you guys would bring me on. So here's what I will tell you, James. I will sign this off the way I sign off everything. I discovered a few years ago that the only thing standing between me and greatness was the actions that I take and the stories I choose to believe about myself. The actions I take and the stories I choose to believe. And so every day we wake up and we have a choice to make actions that are moving towards something, and we have a choice to take actions that are moving away from something. We have a choice to believe stories about ourselves that are empowering, and we have a choice to believe stories that are disempowering. And one of the things that I really connected with was this idea that, you know what, I could choose to be extraordinary, I could choose to be a loser. And I'm going to choose to move towards extraordinary. So that's how I ended up doing so many things in my life. I decided to fly a plane. I decided to start businesses. I decided to learn to trade, all these different things just because I wanted to experience more of life. And I started to believe that the more I experienced life, the more fulfilling life would be. And the more that I really give, you know, more glory to whoever, whatever created me. And so that became my mantra, was just experience more of life and experience an extraordinary life. So James, I give you permission to, number one, believe that you were created to live an extraordinary life. Claire, you were created to live an extraordinary life. And all of your listeners were created to do more, be more, have more, everything about abundance. That's what you were created for. There's nothing in creation that rewards lack. Nothing in creation rewards lack. The only thing that's rewarded is abundance. And you get to choose whether you believe that you were created for abundance or you believe that you were not created for abundance. So I give you permission. I give you freedom. Go out. You were created to live extraordinary. So believe it, receive it, live extraordinary.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
We're recording this on a Monday morning in the UK, and that is just couldn't be a more perfect way to enter the week for us. Jeremy, we love you dearly, genuinely, from the bottom of our hearts, and we are so honoured that you have shared such wisdom on this podcast that we know is going to make a huge difference to everyone that listens to it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Midlife Mentors with Claire and James Davis.
We'd love to hear from you, so drop us a line at info@themidlifementors.com with any questions or topic suggestions.
And make sure you join us on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. You can find us under the Midlife Mentors.
Yeah.